Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Well, Robert, your guest is the front runner, in fact, the only runner to replace Tim Farron as leader. But boy, what a task. Here is one metric. Now, if an election candidate fails to win 5% of their vote, then they lose the £500 deposit that they put up in order to stand. Now, look at this. The LibDems did not lose a single deposit in, ignore this lot, in 2010. That was a very good year for them. But then later, battered and bruised by 5 years of coalition, they lost 341, and then this year, little better. This year, losing 375. That is £187,000 down the drain. Let's have a look at another metric, and that would be whether they are placed very well for the next election. Now, have a look at this. In 2010, they were second place in 242 seats. Blah, blah, blah. This year, they are only second place in 38 seats. Robert.
It does seem to me that that is the big challenge for the Lib Dems. It's that you've gone from being a genuinely national third force to a party that has strengths in bits of the country and with certain kinds of voters. But your national standing has gone. What has gone so badly wrong, and what would you do to address this?
Well, I think you've defined the challenge very well. But I think there is both an opportunity and a need for a party with our values, you know, which is sort of economically competent, hardened in government, but socially progressive, committed to properly financed public services. I mean, that package of things, pro-European. And I think the opportunity is immense. And I think that with my combination of experience, energy, enthusiasm, I can turn this round. It's why I'm standing. I think the reason why it went wrong this time, I think a mixture of things, but the most important one was the surge of support from Jeremy Corbyn, from a lot of the people who might otherwise have come to us, young people who basically shared our views about Europe. They believed, wrongly as it happened, that the Labour Party under Jeremy Corbyn was committed to opposing the government's hard Brexit. I think when the penny drops, there will be a lot of disillusionment.
But a lot of people also wanted an end to austerity. They want more investment in public services. You were a very senior minister in the coalition most associated, or the coalition government, most associated with public spending cuts, with austerity. And I think most people would say one of the reasons why you've done badly this time, and indeed in 2015, is because of your role in the coalition. Now, I've got a question in. We always ask our viewers for questions, and one of them is this one from Stephen Miller, and he says, why do you think that you are the person to turn around the Lib Dems, given, in his words, how tainted you personally are from having been involved in that coalition, which he says is now so deeply unpopular?
No, I don't feel tainted at all. I mean, austerity, as it's now called, wasn't a choice. I mean, we were faced with a country that was in a desperate situation in 2010 as a consequence of the financial crisis. It was turning round 2 years ago. The economy was recovering. I mean, on the Lib Dem side, we would have argued for a different approach to austerity from the Conservatives, but that is now history. You know, we're now in the Brexit situation where the economy is going to deteriorate, public finances are going to get worse. I mean, I would argue, certainly...
So are Corbyn's economics right, then?
No, I mean, this is sort of Venezuelan economics. It makes absolutely no sense, the magic money tree. That is not a sensible way. But, you know, we could... There are two elements to changing the approach to austerity. One is we could be significantly more ambitious in public borrowing for investment. I mean, this is highlighted by...
Which, let's be clear, John McDonnell is being significantly more ambitious in terms of public borrowing for investment than the current government. So they've got that right, have they?
That particular bit, I would agree with. We were arguing it a long time before John McDonnell, and in our manifesto we specified levels that were consistent with a falling amount of debt in the GDP, which I don't think the Labour Party have been. But that's something that should happen in areas like affordable housing. But I think in terms of, you know, just keeping the current budget under control, and any government's going to have to do that, And we did undertake at the election we would sort this by 2019-20. And where the scope there is for shifting the balance somewhat between public spending and tax. And we accepted that if you're going to have a properly funded health service, the public have got to pay a bit more for it. We argued for rolling back some of the tax cuts the Tories have done since we left the coalition.
Not all of your colleagues are signed up to the idea that it's a great vote winner to be in favour of a second referendum. Some say actually it cost them votes. Would you revisit that commitment to a second referendum on the EU if you become leader?
Well, it may have cost us some votes, but I think the basic proposition is sound, because we're not talking about rerunning the last referendum. That's happened. There was an outcome, albeit a very narrow one. What we're talking about is a validatory referendum at the end of the process so that the British public can pass a choice on what's been achieved. I mean, if it's a bad outcome, or if there's no outcome, which is potentially worse with a catastrophic cliff edge, we should have the option of the public approving it or not approving it. If they don't approve it, going back to the status quo.
Now, how closely would you work with the SNP, with Labour, in fact, with all the parties in the House of Commons to force Theresa May in a particular direction on Brexit?
Well, and Conservative dissidents, I mean, across the board. I mean, yes, I mean, our approach at the present is that we're in opposition. We're not trying to prop up the government. We're not going there. But we do want to be constructive, and part of being constructive is talking to people in other parties. And there are a lot of Conservatives deeply unhappy about the kind of extreme Brexit option, not all of them, but a lot of them, and people in the Labour Party who are essentially pro-European, not happy with the Corbyn leadership.
And on that issue,
we should work with them informally.
Just very briefly on that issue, Theresa May hasn't won a majority. Do you think, under the Salisbury Convention, she can instruct the House of Lords on issues like Brexit, or do you think the House of Lords can and should be much more independent this time round? I
think it can and should, and almost certainly will be, because the government has virtually no sanctions they can bring to bear. I'm sure they will be responsible, but they are very, very important players, and the Liberal Democrats are a very powerful force in the House of Lords.
And very briefly, do you think you will be the only candidate to be
I don't know. I gathered that my friend and colleague Ed Davey was interested in standing, but we will see. There is a process which was established yesterday.
Vince Cable, very good to see you again.